Can you hear me now? Thank you, Fancy. You're always there for me. There are a few people that came and went and didn't say anything about not being able to hear me. Thank you. Hopefully that's better. Awesome. So I spent a few minutes here just so I was talking about how the business units will find a way, basically. It, as you move into a data profession, a lot of the business units they'll submit, an idea and through some type of ticketing process or some type of project gateway or something like that, and it, because time passes and the business needs that process or that tool, they'll find a way. They'll create something in Excel, they'll create something in Microsoft Access that enables them to do what they need to do to get the job done. And just, as you move into data profession, don't discount those tools. Don't discount understanding how to use those tools so that when you run into those things, you understand also what it takes and what you need to do to migrate those systems and those processes that they've created into a more production ready uh, environment and tool. So, how are you doing this evening? Hopefully, hopefully well. If you've got, you know how it goes, Fancy. If you have any questions, just let me know what you got. Um, but let's see. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, don't discount Excel and be sure that you encourage that. I mean, it, those are your people that will potentially eventually move into data roles themselves someday. So be sure that you're encouraging as you roll into the as you run into those situations. Um, that being said, talking about Excel, Excel is something that you'll run into and use a lot when as a data professional, not just because the business has created something, but sometimes that's how you receive data. Sometimes you'll get it in a CSV format. A lot of times you'll get things in CSV formats that are either dumped into a SFTP location, so a secure file transfer location, or they'll be dumped. A lot of exports from various systems come out in Excel. Um, so if it's not like an API where you're getting JSON data, um, a lot of those exports from various systems may come out in Excel or in CSV format, and you'll need to be able to use Excel to understand what that data looks like. So be sure that as you're moving through your data journey, be sure that you understand how to migrate in Excel, how to migrate things from Excel, but also how to navigate through Excel to do various analysis and things. In addition, no matter your best efforts, the business is going to want to take whatever dashboard got created, whatever system got created uh, for reporting, and export it into Excel. It's it's going to happen. People love Excel. The business units love Excel, and it don't discount that uh, they love Excel, and they will. It'll always be part of business. It's not going away anytime soon. In fact, um, I heard recently that they're going to be adding Python functionality within Excel, just like they have Power Query in Excel, where you could use uh, various SQL methods. Um, so Excel is a very robust tool. Um, it's great for analysis. It's great for, I mean, I even use it sometimes to, uh, it, concatenate things easily. If I have something that sometimes I'm creating a SQL script, and in order to concatenate things really quickly and easily, it's just something quick and dirty I have to get done and get out and throw it into Excel uh, and it helps me create some SQL queries. But um, yeah, so again, If anybody has any questions, be sure to pop them in the chat, and we'll answer any questions. Hopefully, everybody's having a great evening this evening. Um, so, one of the upcoming videos that I'll be doing is speaking of Excel and APIs and things like that, is learning how to take your data from QuickBooks and pull it and put it into a SQL Server database. All with a script, all with a Python script, and all automated so that you have it running on whatever um, duration that you want to have it running on, whether that be once a day or or every couple hours or whatever that time frame is that you want to update your QuickBooks or your Square data or even your HubSpot data, right? A lot of SMBs have HubSpot and QuickBooks and often Square, right? And it, so I've got a video coming out here in the next week where we'll be talking through how to write that Python script to be able to pull that data from those systems. They're all APIs. So I'm super excited about that. And how to take that data and automatically push it into a SQL server so that you could build something for small businesses that they could start to gain some of those data insights from, so that they could help so that it helps them to drive the growth in their business. Um, and we could even, if there's some interest in that tonight, I'm happy to even walk through uh, that Python script and kind of talk through what that looks like, pulling that data from that QuickBooks API specifically. Um, Now, conversely, if writing a Python script for maybe a small business may be too intimidating for the small businesses themselves. If anybody out there is a small business looking to start their own data journey, alternatively, that's a free and expensive way to do that, right? All the tools that you need in order to pull your data from QuickBooks, pull your data from Square, pull your data from HubSpot, and push it into a SQL server. Everything that's part of that is free. It takes time to learn how to write the Python script or to watch the video that I'll create where I'll provide the Python script. And it takes time to, set that up and schedule it with Windows Scheduler and download and install, SQL Server Express on your computer locally. But it's a good start for a small business that wants to start that data journey and wants to start having all that data in one place. The great advantage for SMBs for that is that all of their financial data and all of their customer data is all in one place. And so when they get to the end of their quarter or the end of the year and they need to export all their stuff. Oh yeah, we'll look at that. Thank you, Fancy. So when they get to the end of the quarter or the end of the year, when they have to export all their stuff for their accountant, like you could set something up where they go in, hit a button, and it refreshes a report, has all of their data in front of them. They hit export, and it comes out in a nice package that they could just email to their accountant. And all of their data gatherings quick and easy and simple. Now, the alternative to that is they're going into all those different systems, probably exporting data, or potentially, some of them may just be writing it all down and then handing it to their accountants. So, um, so there's definitely better ways, more efficient ways that you can help to build something for them, or that if you're a SMB, then you could build it for yourself and have something where you could quick and efficiently uh, have those types of reporting at your fingertips at any given time. um, you know those types of having all that data all in one location is super powerful. There's so much that you could do with it. um, and again, SMBs, small medium sized businesses, often don't have the budget or the ability to hire a full data team or IT department. So either they go without, right? And I think that's what a lot of businesses do. They just go without, or they try to learn how to do it themselves. Small and medium sized businesses are super busy. Um, And I think that they're underserved portion that really could use some data help. It's a great, I think it would be a great market for, local data professionals or aspiring data professionals that may be looking to start to build their portfolio to work with some of those businesses locally in your area and help them to understand what it looks like to have all their data in one spot so that they could be a more, data driven or data guided um, business. So SMBs have are so in tune to who their customers are and who their markets are that they often, one, feel like they don't need that data, um, but also, you know, again, they're underserved. They don't have the money, they don't have the budget, but they don't feel like they need that data, but they're so in tune to, their customers, their market, that they have a wonderful intuition, and so pushing this data-driven concept to them sometimes isn't always heard, right? And sometimes they don't h they think that you're telling them that their intuition's bad, and that's not the case, right? Their intuition is probably better than most, uh, but there is still an advantage to having data at their fingertips. Again, even if it is just so that at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year, they could hit a button, have all their accounting stuff all in one place. They hit a button, they send it to their accountant, and it's done. They don't have to spend hours gathering all that data. But, creating marketing campaigns, understanding what customers are buying what things at what time of the year, there's an intuition to that, but having that data in front of them that they could confirm that intuition or sometimes adjust their intuition a little bit. Sometimes they're off by, half a season, or they might be a little off by which customers, and especially, the more specific kind of nuances of what types of customers may be purchasing what types of products or services, and they could fine tune that. Again, they have wonderful intuition. They've it takes a huge amount of intelligence and strength and courage to go out there and start a business. um, Having that additional power of having all that data at their fingertips really could take them to the next level, help them to compete with some of the bigger businesses that they may be competing with. Again, if anybody out there, people are starting to show up. So if anybody out there has any specific questions, be sure that you pop them in the chat. So, all that being said, I wanted to say that, for like I said, for SMBs particular, writing a Python script may be a little intimidating. It may be that, if you want to do it yourself and you have a little bit of budget that you can spend, maybe a cloud platform is the way to go to pull all that data together. Because I'll say that, it takes a little bit in Python to write it, not a ton, but a little bit to write it out and understand what's going on. Um, but in something like Azure and with Data Factory, you can easily, efficiently, and cost effectively still gather all that information. There are connectors in Azure Data Factory and Synapse directly to QuickBooks, directly to Square, directly to HubSpot, where you could connect to those tools directly. You put in some credentials and you set up your pipeline. You choose which of the data sets within those tools that you want to pull, and you tell it where to put it, and you hit the button to run it, and you schedule it, and you're done. um, and you could almost just forget about it. Very rarely would you ever have to touch it again. And the cost of something like that, it depends on the volume, right? With those tools, they scale extremely well, but it does depend on the volume, and it can be as low as $50 a month. Um, Again, the other method is free if you want to do it in Python, but but in Azure, it could be as low as, $50 a month for that processing, especially if you're only talking, maybe a couple thousand customers, maybe, 1,000 or so products, maybe, less than, 100,000 invoices per month. it, you're probably not talking more than 50-ish dollars a month for that data processing within Azure. And Azure is the Microsoft version of the cloud platform. So there's three major players when it comes to cloud platforms, right? There is Azure, which is Microsoft. There is AWS, which is Amazon, and then there is GCP, which is Google Cloud. So those are the three big players that you see out in the cloud market space. Um, and even in large businesses, large corporations, those are the three that you see. Um, so again, we've talked about this before in the past, but if you are an aspiring data professional, I would definitely pick one of those and learn from it. Understand what those data tools are in those systems, understand how they work, understand how you could start getting in there and playing with them, and and pick one of them. But if you're a SMB, don't let. Haha, that's a good question. Uh, I'll get to that in just a second. Um, so and welcome back. I know you're often around too. Thank you for coming back. Um, So, but yeah, pick one of those cloud platforms, learn it because it does make a huge difference in if you have a little, if you're a small SMB, uh, then it's efficient and still cost effective to use those tools if you're willing to spend you know 50 to $150 a month and your volume is not ginormous, right? It's still pretty cost effective. Um, so the question on the table is Azure data engineer versus AWS engineer, which career path is best? That's an awesome question, right? And that is, you know, they're very different tools. They are not, you know, it, when you look at AWS Glue versus Synapse or Azure Data Factory, there's not a huge difference. I mean, there's significant differences between those tools, but at a basic level, there's not a huge difference. And Azure has the larger market share uh, between the two, but I will say that it really depends on the industry, and if there's a specific business that you're targeting for your career, then I would go and research which one right now that they're using, because I'll say that when I was at AT&T, uh, they had a contract with Microsoft, so it was Azure primarily, but there were pockets within AT&T because AT&T had acquired other companies that used AWS. And I did several projects where I had to migrate from AWS into Azure. So having some familiarity with both is good. So that when you run into those types of projects, then you don't have to learn a whole new cloud platform. But I'll say that Azure has the larger market share. I would recommend Azure. The kind of the bar for entry is a little bit lower for Azure than it is for AWS as far as technical knowledge. Azure is a little bit easier than AWS. AWS definitely provides some more complex and more sophisticated tools within it than Azure does, but Azure does a great job as well. Um, and again, Microsoft has the market share in most of the spaces. So I would recommend Azure, but again, if there's a specific industry or a specific business that you're targeting, go out and research that. Understand which one it is that they use, and 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 target that specific cloud platform. Great question. That's an awesome question. Um, Very cool. So we're talking about SMBs, and uh, that we have an upcoming video, talking through how to pull data from various um, platforms that SMBs use and pull it all into a centralized data warehouse, centralized database at least, so that you can provide some dashboards and reporting for them. Now, so be sure to look out for those. Fancy, I'll definitely be going through those videos in those videos from start to finish, what that looks like, um, and if that's the way that tonight goes, then we'll jump into some of that too. But wanted to also touch on, we are going to launch soon our October coding challenge. Uh, Hooray! Let's see. Got my first rolls a day. Congratulations. That's awesome. That's awesome. You're welcome. That is amazing, dude. I appreciate that's great. Thanks for coming on and sharing. Uh, that is really cool. That is really cool. Uh, I hope that you love it. It is it's exciting when you get your first role as a, officially as a, data title, whether it's analyst or engineer, scientist. It's cool. That's awesome. So incredibly excited for you. Um, Very cool. So uh, I'm glad that people are. Thank you. That really makes my week. I appreciate it. Um, I'm so excited for you. Okay, so uh, you know, we had the question about different cloud platforms. Which career path is best. It again, Azure has the market share. AWS still has about 25%, 30%, depending on the month and what job postings are out there. But understand which cloud platform you're in, the industry that you want to target or the business that you want to target uses. Um, Also, we're talking about, don't for small businesses, for SMBs, don't uh, discount the fact that they might have enough money to spin up a Azure account or an AWS account and start to do some of that stuff in the cloud, because it doesn't have to be something where it's $1,000 a month. Even it could very well be, so processes. You could set up processes that cost as low as, $50 to $100 a month, and that may be worth it for them if it creates some automation for their business, creates some tools for their business where it's going to increase their revenue, because they're able to easily and more quickly create marketing campaigns, or create, understand better what that supply chain issues may look like, because they have all that data at their fingertips, at any given moment. So they may be willing to pay that. So if you're an aspiring data engineer, or you're a data engineer that's looking to go into consulting and you want to target SMBs, you know, give them the options. Make sure that you let them tell you what their budget is, and help them to set those things up. Those are amazing tools out there, and they could do it all for free. There's so much that they could still do for free, um, as well. So I was going to get into. I'm so incredibly excited for Jorge. Um, a October coding challenge. So we're going to do an October coding challenge. I'm going to launch it probably after our call tonight, after this session tonight, where I'm just going to give you a data set. It's going to have about 1 million records. It's going to be a sales type data set. And I'm going to ask you to create an efficient process, an efficient query, where you are aggregating data at various levels. And so I'll give you the descriptions, the details around that. Um, but and again, whoever has the best submission, uh, the quickest, whoever is the earliest and the most efficient submission, I will spotlight that person in our in one of our Friday night lives. I think is what I'm gonna do it. Um, this past month, I don't think I gave enough uh, time for people. I didn't get any submissions, uh, so I hate that. But I saw a lot of people went in and downloaded the data, so super excited about that. I hate that. I think I only gave like a week and a half turnaround time. So this month you'll have the almost the full month. Like I said, I'll put the data set out there tonight, and so that you could start looking at it, importing it into a local database, whether that be, if you want to spin up a Postgres database or a SQL server, then spin up one of those, download, and then whatever method that you want to choose to import that data, and then aggregate that. I'll give you the various levels, but it's basically, I want to know by month, by quarter, by year, what the sales have been, and then also by segment, by customer type, and and be able to provide all that in whatever the most efficient queries are that you could provide. So, be sure that as you're doing that, you are looking at the data, thinking about things like dimensions. What data can you split out into different tables so that when you do create your analytics, then things are more efficient. Think about things like indexing, which columns should you index based on what your query is going to look like. Make sure that you're not over indexing. We've talked about that in a previous video. Um, Make sure that you're using the proper joins when you are splitting that out into dimensions and then rejoining things between your fact table and your dimension tables. Um, so again, the most efficient query and the quickest wins, and I will spotlight that person in one of our Friday night lives. In addition, like we've talked about, we have the Gambill Data Sphere, which is a Discord channel where you could jump on and have discussions with other people in the community on what your methods have been, and kind of brainstorm on what the most efficient method may be. So I figure a million records is big enough that you would potentially run into some efficiency issues, um, and small enough to where the download doesn't take forever when you go to the website and download the data. So, uh, about a million records. Again, for those of you that have joined tonight, for those of you that are here like every Friday night, thank you so much. I'm excited to say that our little community, has grown to over 450 members. I am incredibly excited that we're over 450 this week, and I hope that we continue to grow. Super excited for Jorge. Congratulations on your first role as a data analyst. Um, and I hope to continue to help the community to gain those types of roles. Hopefully the content that I put out helps to give you the skills, the knowledge, um, and the interview tips to be able to achieve those goals. So again, if anybody has any questions, specific, if you have interview questions, if you have, what type of data path should I choose, put those questions in the chat. If you have a SQL issue that you've ran into, that's what these open office hours are for. Drop them in the chat, and we'll walk through it. We'll walk through it live. If it's a SQL thing, we could I'll pull up a SQL server or something, and we'll kind of troubleshoot and walk through that. Or if it's a Python question, we'll bring up VS Code and troubleshoot it. So that is kind of what I've done these Friday nights for. Any questions? So all that being said, maybe we walk through some Python code. Let's take a look. So let me share my screen here. We'll jump into the QuickBooks API, and and Python script. Window, this one, sure. All right. So this is the Python script. We've talked about this get parameters, custom module, and functions that we use to store our parameters more securely, so that when you are sharing, so that when you do push your code up to Git, then you're not pushing up, your secrets, your any credentials or anything like that. You'll see here we are using a sandbox environment in QuickBooks for that data, because I don't have QuickBooks myself, so I use the sandbox data for testing. Um, this is something that you could do for free too. If you want to get out there and play with uh, this QuickBooks data, you could get out there, uh, sign up for an account, and get access to the sandbox data for free. So get out there, do it if you want to play with an API that has some real world practical examples. Um, so we have this custom module and function for the get parameters to go out and get secrets. Like I said, we talked about that previously. So if you're interested in that, I'll put the link in the description afterwards to that video where you could, take a look where I walk through that, that Python script for that. But if you're looking for it in between now and then, it is the video that I recorded probably last week and put out last week, um, talking about Python functions and modules. So take a look at that video, and you'll be able to see what that custom Python script looks like that pulls those parameters and stores them a little bit more securely. So there's a few things going on here. We're importing a few, this OS is actually not being used. I thought I might use it, decided that I didn't need it. There's a handful of libraries that we're using in this Python script. We've got the date time. Basically, this is going to give us a count, be able to, it lets us be able to create a formula that goes back several days and then pulls all the data from that point forward. Um, it's always good to do that, to overlap a little bit and then do a merge, because sometimes you'll miss data. Um, Things will change in the source database, not necessarily maybe QuickBooks, but your source data may change a little bit, and or something may fail, and you need to make sure that you could overlap that time frame a little bit, and then that you're doing a upsert or merge. So though an upsert and a merge are kind of like, are you've already got your data there, and you need to not just add new records, but you also need to update potentially the existing records that are already there. So things like a customer table, this happens all the time, right? Where a customer changes an address, maybe they change their name. And there's an example of customer table in this QuickBooks data. Um, Maybe they change like I said, change their name, change their address, and it needs to update. That table needs to update, and so you do a merge or an upsert, again depending on what tool that you may be using. If you're using one of the cloud um, pipeline resources, and you're using something like Synapse, ADF, AWS Glue, then you could do an upsert, IICS, which is the Informatica cloud platform. Then you could do an upsert into that table, and it will update the existing records and uh, insert the new records. So, anyways, that's the concept with that. But we have a so that's why you overlap that time a little bit. Requests, this request library is like the library that you will use to access APIs, to pull data from APIs. Some platforms have their own custom library that you could use, but request is primarily what you're going to use when you're writing Python scripts and you're hitting an API. This last one here, PyODBC, that is what enables us to connect directly to our SQL server. Um, you could use it to connect to a local SQL server or Postgres server, what MySQL, whatever your you know server of choices, and and create that connection. If you're using something like Azure or AWS, they have their own custom libraries that you could use, and I'll be going over that in a future video, talking about how you write a Python script that will go out, hit Azure, grab a key, and push data from a API call specifically back into a an Azure, Synapse SQL database. Um, so, so those are what those libraries are, and then had some people come and go. Um, So we've got, a handful of things here. We've got this redirect URI. And so what this is just it's the OAuth authentication piece where it needs to go out and get a token, and then actually there's the token endpoint. So this goes out and gets a bearer token so that we could use that for the authentication back to QuickBooks, and then so that it will allow us to pull that data. We've got a base URL. So the base URL is again, we're using the sandbox environment. So the base URL is the QuickBooks URL so that we can ask for that information. That's basically what an API is, right? An API is kind of like when you go into a restaurant, they have a menu. The API is the menu, right? You could choose stuff from that menu to request that information, or, you know, obviously, you're not requesting information at a restaurant, but you get the concept, hopefully. If anybody has any specific questions, whether it be about this Python script that we're going over or anything data related, be sure to pop them in the chat. I've had some, all right, had some exciting comments and questions. So, all right, so so that's kind of what those are. We've got our parameters for our SQL server, our database, username and password, so that we could access our SQL server and push that data directly in. Um, and then we have these custom functions, right? So we've built out some functions here that we're going to use to go through. And, again, first we have this get access token. And, I'll real high level just explain what this is. It's going out, asking QuickBooks, hey, these are my credentials. These are my initial credit credentials. Can I get a key to this data for tonight so that I could start accessing it? Um, Depending on the API, that token may last an hour. It may last a day. Um, it just depends on the API. Each API that you use will be unique and different. Um, this next function uh, goes out and gets the data, right? So it takes that access token from the previous function, goes out and asks for information. So in QuickBooks, the different data sets are called entities, and you run into that a lot with platforms, that they call those tables or those data sets entities. Um, so the data sets are entities, and so the Python script itself is going to take the access token from the previous step, put it into that function, add whichever entity that we're requesting at this point. If you start with customers, then it'll pass in that customers one. You'll see it sets up a header, some parameters, and so the parameters. QuickBooks has its own SQL syntax. Uh, So there's a QuickBooks SQL syntax. It's very similar to any other SQL syntax. Um, Generally, you'll see that it just is select star from entity. Um, so it'll be like select star from customer, select star from invoices, whatever the case it may be. Um, and then it'll go through and request that data. It'll pass back a JSON payload. They're called payloads, but it's basically just a long string of texts with field names and then values, field name value pairs, and pass that data back. And then we go through and we parse out that response, right? We're and parses just means that we're taking it and breaking it down into the format that we need it broken down to so that we could push it into our SQL Server. And then there's a function in here that goes through and creates the tables. So it kind of walks through just normal create table statements. There's a if statement at the beginning of it that goes through and checks if that table already exists. And if it does, then it doesn't do um, the create table statement. And if it doesn't, then it creates that table for you. So it'll go through, create those tables. Um, and then we have some different functions depending on which of the um, entities that we're looking at. So customers, invoices, we've got the items, and then the payments. And so basically, each of these are merge statements, um, and that might be a great subject as well. I think probably constitutes a full video walking through what a merge statement is and um, and what each of these pieces are. So I'll do that in a separate video. But um, but parses out. Here you see where it parses out the different fields: the ID, the name, the type, unit price, purchase cost, income account reference. And parses out those fields so that it could insert them into those tables. So, um, at a real high level, that's basically it. That you'll see that there is a um, if name equals main. So basically, that says that if somebody just runs this Python script and it's main, then it's going to go through and do all these things. And it starts with this main function, and you see some try and accept. And so try and accept are in Python are your in other languages you might see in other uh, programming languages you'll see try and catch, and in here it's try and accept. We'll go over soon. I'll do a video on how to create a stored procedure. And so, what a stored procedure is, you're writing SQL to, I'm going to jump back to my full screen here. Uh, so, what a stored procedure is, you're writing, it's called, for SQL Server, it's called T-SQL, right? And you're writing a full script that does several things all in one procedure call. And so, and what a call is just you're running something, right? You're executing a procedure. Um, but yeah, if we've had several people join. So if you have any general questions or any specific questions, be sure to pop them in the chat. We've had some, a little bit of great conversation so far talking about various things. To pull their specific data. Um, so Fancy's asking here, would you be using your SMB's QuickBooks credentials to pull their specific data? Yes. So there are, it's not the QuickBooks. So like you'll have to get them to log into QuickBooks or provide you access to their QuickBooks account. And then you can, in QuickBooks, there's no additional cost for it, but it's just part of their normal subscription to QuickBooks. But you can get their account ID, their client ID, and then a client secret. Um, and I'll walk through in that video that I do where to get that and how to get that within the QuickBooks platform. But then you will be, actually pulling their actual data. Um, so it'll be their specific data that you'll pull. Yes. Um, So here we've got a question. Thanks for the advice. What's the best way to quickly learn advanced Python, especially for data engineering? Um, I mean, my method is always trial and error. I am I have my master's degree, but I was self-taught long before I went back to school to get any of my degrees. And I've talked about this in one of my previous videos, but the first geez, almost 15 years of my career, I I didn't have a degree at all, not even my bachelor's degree. And then I went back and got my bachelor's and my master's so that I could move into a leadership position. But but as far as quickly learning advanced Python, For data engineering, what you'll use Python for in data engineering is very different than what a software engineer is going to use it for, because you'll be using different libraries than they'll necessarily use, and you don't have to quite have that same scope that they need. It depends on your learning, on your preferred learning method. If you are a learn by do, so you need a practical example to really for it to absorb, and that's me. I'm that type of learner. You could go out and go out to like Kaggle and do some of the projects that they have set up out there. Uh, but for me, I went out and found some nerdy data sets, right? I went out and, you could go out to like the Python. There's a not Python. There's a Marvel API, and there's like a Rick and Morty API, and you could go out and write Python scripts that go out and hit those APIs, pull it in, and you could, you know, do some, data engineering with that. Um, so if you're learn by doing, then you could do, again, Kaggle is a great resource. Um, Data.world, you could go out and find some great data sets uh, and just do your own project, build your own project. And that's a great way. If you identify a data, type of data set that for a subject that you're passionate about, that you're excited about, there is no better way to learn than to go out, find that data set, import it in, and practice. As far as knowing which libraries that you need to use, things like that, Google. I mean, whether it be uh, YouTube videos or the documentation. I'll say that for Python, for most libraries, the documentation is fantastic. Um, and so if you're a learn by read, then go out and read the documentation. Um, and you can learn it that way. There are don't when you're doing that, I'll say don't you'll see a lot of things with pandas, right? Pandas is a super popular library that you use in Python, but don't neglect polars, polars and PySpark, right? PySpark's super popular because it uses that Spark platform, and it's got some parallelism to it, and and you use it in Databricks, right? Databricks is a popular tool that you'll use PySpark in, and Spark, and uh, various other things. You'd also use SQL, but um, go out, find a data set that you love, go out, play with it, and just start writing. You know, Google. You could even use like Claude or there's Claude and Chat GPT. You could ask those, say, hey, I want to use this data set. Can you, provide an example script, and and walk through it. The great part about that is you'll also learn how to troubleshoot because it won't be right. Um, so it'll give you ways, it'll give you some practice in troubleshooting as well. If you're going to use an AI to learn from, practice writing scripts, um, Claude, I would choose Claude over ChatGPT. Um, ChatGPT is awesome for brainstorming. Claude is better at specifically it's better at Python programming. Um, so let it know that, hey, I'm an aspiring data engineer, or I am a junior data engineer, or whatever the case may be, and and that you this is the thing that you want to do, and it'll give you some practice scripts to play with. Um, but just know that it may not be quite right, and you'll have to troubleshoot various issues. Um, Also, again, we've trying to build this community with in Discord at the Gambill Data Sphere, um, on the website. So you could go out there, and I'm usually in there at any given time and to answer questions. Um, and so I'll get to those when I can. but yeah, use lean on the community for support. Use the tools available to you. If you're a learn by reader, um, let me grab this book. Where'd it go? Oh, sure can. Um, if you're a learn by reader, there is this Python programming book. It's super thick. It's got a ton of data, um, and it walks you through step by step a lot of things, and does a good job of explaining. Um, Again, I'll put the link to that if you're interested in that in the description of the video. But it's a great tool to use, and definitely goes through some advanced topics. All right, Fancy. I heard you once say that you had to start as a data analyst and gain that experience to get into a data engineering role. Because companies say, yeah, I mean, um, I'll touch on this subject real quick first, and then I'll bounce to that one. Um, yeah, because companies won't trust you with their data. It, it, companies maybe companies don't often hire junior data engineers. Um, it just doesn't happen real often. You have to oftentimes jump into a analyst position and gain that practice and that knowledge, that practical uh, experience before you move into a data engineering role and have some of that background. Um, so yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. It's definitely true. Um, so the follow up question, the actual question to that, I guess, is this: um, what's the best way to demonstrate your data engineering skill set if you have little to no professional experience? Um, I would build and start building a portfolio. Now, there's multiple ways that you could do that. Most of it is on your own dime, on your own time. Um, Haha, that's a good question. Um, and but go out, kind of like I talked about from Parva's question, go out and find a data set that you're passionate about, that you're excited about. And that serves a couple of different, pieces of a interview. One is that, the primary piece is that you have that experience, right? Where you pulled data, you did some analysis, you were able to break it down and show that you were able to figure out and understand what that data looks like. But also, if it's a data set that you're excited about and passionate about, then that excitement and that passion for learning comes through in your interview. So if it's a data set you're excited about, it serves, a double purpose of giving you start building your portfolio, and um and you're excited about it when you're talking about it. That's my 2 cents on that. The other way is that I want to talk about is you could go on to is it Upstart, um, and try to find and try to bid on projects. Um, you get so many credits a month for free on that, and you could try to bid on projects. The competition there is super high. If especially as a beginner on there, you probably won't get anything that's going to pay you a whole lot, but you'll get paid a little bit, and you'll start to be able to build that portfolio. Um, but those are the kind of the two methods to gain experience if you don't have a different path. Um, I will, you've probably heard me say this before, Fancy, but I'll also say that there's probably something in your, if you currently have a position that's not a data position, there's probably something in your current job that you could find that um, that you could either help to automate via data engineering type skills and methods, or some type of analysis that you could do that would demonstrate those data engineering and data analysis skills. um, so yeah. So what is a comprehensive enough project that would impress me as a hiring manager, or is it a certification? Um, Certifications are cool. Honestly, if you've done a project, if you've taken that initiative yourself to go out and do an end-to-end project where you are identifying a data source, you're studying to learn what that data source is and what it looks like, and you've created a process to pull that data, put it into a database, break it down into a model, and then even carry it through into uh, you know a presentation type format. One of the visualization using one of the visualization tools like Looker or Power BI or Tableau. Um, then that again for me as a hiring manager, that serves multiple pieces, right? It serves that you've got the initiative to go out and do those things. It serves your hunger for that learning, for that knowledge. And you know it serves the piece that you know how to do it, that you have that experience, that you can do that, and that you can think through logically those different steps independently. That's even that, being able to think through those steps logically, independently, without somebody holding your hand, um, is a big deal, because that's honestly what differentiates like a junior from just a professional level data engineer. Because a lot of times, if you do get into a junior level position, then you know it takes time to learn how to logically think through those processes, and it takes experience. Um, so if you get to the point where you've been practicing and you've been studying, and you are at that point where you can logically think through those things, especially being able to logically model out data sets, then that's a big deal. As far as the certification piece, certifications are cool if you don't have any other way to demonstrate your experience. Um, but honestly, people over rotate a little bit on certifications sometimes. And I'll say that some roles require that certification, right? But generally, you're going to be looking at more advanced roles before they're requiring the certification. Um, but I would definitely recommend building a portfolio of projects where you can, especially if it's a personal portfolio, uh, a portfolio of projects where you can store it out on GitHub, where you could, provide a GitHub link for the, recruiter, for the hiring manager, and say, hey, these are the things that I've done. These are the scripts that I've written, and that's a great way to, probably is the best way for me to show that you have the practical knowledge to be able to pull data from an API. Because the reality is, i- in studies, whether that be formal education in a university, or even certifications, those are oftentimes kind of golden environment type situations where it's a perfect scenario where there's no problems, and you will rarely to never run into that issue. Um, I might talk about here in a little bit my experience with Zoom recently, and being able to pull data from their API and working with Zoom. But yeah, it's that would be my recommendation. Parva, based on my experience, how many data engineers do companies usually need? Are you seeing any changes with AI related jobs in data engineering? Um, that's kind of a loaded question. So it depends on the size of the business, um, and it depends on what their roadmap looks like, right? If they're a mature business, a mature, have a mature data org that has very solidified um, processes in place of and patterns in place of, this is what we do in this situation. This is what we do in this situation, and they have um, a lot of their things already set up, then they might be able to do with a few. If they're a um, larger corporation that has, you know, maybe hundreds, sometimes hundreds of terabytes of data, or even several petabytes of data flowing into their data warehouse daily, they may need a team of 8 or 10. So it really depends on the scale, as far as how many they need. Um, a medium-sized scale, I've seen businesses try to do it with one, which in my opinion is a mistake for multiple reasons. Um, it's no good to ever have a single point of failure in your organization, but minimum two, probably maximum 10, depending on the org and the team and what that team's uh, doing. Uh, some companies have multiple teams of data engineers geared at each different piece of their business. The larger corporations have that. It will have that kind of setup, and so you may see several teams of 5 or 6 data engineers sometimes. But then in those same corporations, you may have a branch, a different uh, branch of an org of that corporation where there's just a couple of data engineers. Again, yeah, you always try not to have a single point of failure, so minimum two. Um, so any changes with the AI related jobs in data engineering? Not yet. Um, I think AI right now helps data engineers, helps mid-level, mid-career, and higher data engineers maybe be more efficient because they could more quickly get a script and copy and paste it and go through and make it into what they need it to be, and they don't have to write all that out. Um, but you also have those 10x engineers out there that are amazing, and they can write out a script in an hour that does everything you need. If you don't know what a 10x engineer, programmer is, go out and look it up. But there's a handful of, people out there in the profession that are absolutely amazing and can run circles around everybody else, no matter how long they've been in it. But but no, I've not really seen any changes yet with AI related jobs. I mean, with AI, impacting the profession, but I anticipate that over time it's going to slow the growth of those roles, because we'll be able to be a little bit more efficient, a little quicker. There'll be more of us that can do things in that 10x type time frame than than there are now. But not yet, not yet. And basically it's because there's just um, too many errors yet with AI generated code. And when I say errors, it's not always that it won't work, but it's often maybe not the most efficient method. Um, and you'll have to go back and rewrite it to make it more efficient. But y'all have had some awesome questions tonight. Thanks, guys. Um, so yeah, keep them coming. Great questions. So let's see. I will say, as far as going back to AI a little bit, you know, it and going back to creating your own projects, starting to build your own portfolio. AI is awesome at brainstorming ideas, whether that be, hey, I've got this is the industry or the the data type, this type of data that I'm super interested in. Maybe you are a Star Wars person and you want to understand, hey, is there a Star Wars data set that I could pull, or just ask it, whether that be Claude or GPT. Ask it, hey, can you create a Star Wars data set for me that I could use to practice data engineering skills? And it'll give it to you. It'll create a synthetic data set for you. If you ask it explicitly where I could find that data, then it'll probably give you, um, online where to find and download some of that data. But use them for what they are right now. It's they're great tools for brainstorming. They're great tools for it, for getting something initially that you're going to have to troubleshoot. So yeah. That's awesome. Uh, Thank you, Fancy. Tackle practice. That's awesome. Thank you. That also makes my day. Really it I love teaching, and I really genuinely hope that, uh, and it's not like I'm making any money from this, right? I'm genuinely out here just trying to help people uh, get into data professions because I love it, and I hope that other people love it too. Um, how long will it take me to complete the QuickBooks project? I'm like mid video now. Um, Ooh, I could do that one. I like that one too. Sorry, I'll get to that next question. I get excited about the questions that come in. Um, I'm mid video, so I hope to honestly wrap it up tonight or tomorrow, and then probably schedule it to post next week. Um, but including the visualization piece. So I'm going to do the QuickBooks video. I'll probably do the Square video after that. And then the following week, I'll do the visualization piece um, that pulls it all together. Right. So it won't be this coming week, but it'll be probably towards the end of the following week that I'll pull it all together with the visualization piece. This is a great question. How to get started with data modeling? Is there a possibility of making content on fundamentals of data modeling? Absolutely. I did create a video that is star schema versus snowflake schema. You could check that out. But as far as actually going through and taking a data set and breaking it down and showing you, okay, these are the things that I would put into this type of dimension, and these are the things that I would put into this type of dimension. I'm happy to. That's a great idea. I appreciate it. I'll I'll add that to my list. So I could probably start that. That'd be a great thing to do probably after this current series that I'm doing now. So maybe in a few weeks I could get to that. That's awesome. Yeah, I can definitely do that. Um, and I think that even, I mean, the QuickBooks data kind of comes out like that already in dimensions. So it's not a great uh, use case for that, but I might actually do one about Zoom because the Zoom data comes out kind of a little bit more all conglomerated, all in one lump sum, and has to be separated out a little bit. So I might do something like that. But yeah, I'll create a data set and absolutely that's I'm gonna write that down real quick so I don't forget because these comments disappear after the video goes away. So, well, I'll have it on here, but I want to write it down. Um, that's awesome. Thank you. Was there another data engineer on YouTube with a Discord channel had a similar content to yours, and he was very encouraging. Oh, do you remember what their name was? I'd love to check them out. Um, I follow the Seattle data engineer guy, and oh yeah, really? that'll be good. Um, I mean, it's cool. I'm excited that I'm growing, that our community's growing. Don't quit. Please don't quit. Okay. Honestly, I really do it just because for me, it serves a couple different purposes. One, um, in my current role I have now, we use Informatica, and I don't wanna lose some of the Python and like, Azure skills that I've, learned over the years. I wanna kinda stay keep my foot in those, different areas, and so it helps me to continue to develop those skills, um, further beyond what I have. In addition, it also helps me to not lose any of it, not forget any of it as I kind of don't have that in my day job. Especially as I start doing some consulting, I'm working on doing some consulting as well on the side, and um, so I want to be sure to continue to foster that. And I love teaching. I that's discouraging. Um, I want to show y'all just Fancy's other comment here that unfortunately he got fed up from the lack of engagement. Um, and I'll say I was a little discouraged last month, but I have to remember that I gave people like a week and a half, 2 weeks to do the project last month and for the challenge. And you all have careers just like I have other priorities that 2 weeks just isn't enough time. Time disappears on you, and uh, so that that makes sense. Um, and again, unless somebody goes out and like follows the some of the what are they called, affiliate links that I put out there for like the book stuff that I did last week. And actually, purchase and enough people purchase stuff through Amazon. I mean, I'm not making any money off of this. I'm doing it because I enjoy teaching and I also want to keep up my own skills. So, um, so yeah, so yeah, that's a shame. But yeah, this is not my primary source of income. It's not a source of income for me at all. So I do it because I enjoy the teaching part, and it serves that need in me to share back with the community. I really I I've said this before, but I've gotten so much from this profession over the last 25 years. It's important to me that I give back to the profession in a way that encourages other people to want to join the profession. So um, yeah, so I don't plan on quitting. I had this conversation with my wife too. Of it, this is especially doing these Friday night live ones. Um, Friday night live, it's like Saturday night live. Doing these Friday night live ones, it it's a really part of a big highlight of the week of my week for me. So even when I've had a rough week, maybe busy, stressful week at work, this is I've really enjoyed doing these, especially for those of you that have come back to do these with me on Friday nights. Uh, I'm really excited. I appreciate y'all. Um, yeah, he may have deleted it, but yeah, that's a shame. That's a shame. But yeah, let's see. This is a great question. How much are certifications? Um, how important are certifications in getting a job? Uh, you have a master's degree in data science. That's awesome. Um, Seems like it's not enough. I you know Here's the thing right now is that it's hard. The market is really difficult right now. There's been so many big tech layoffs, and when during those times where there's been big tech layoffs, it's hard. You have to figure out a way to differentiate yourself. Certifications, again, for me as a hiring manager, um, it's not ever anything that I put a whole lot of weight on. Um, it might catch my eye as I'm looking at a resume, but it's definitely not a deciding factor. Honestly, my biggest recommendation right now, especially, is to figure out how to contact a hiring manager or how to reach out to an HR department and just express your passion for for data science or data engineering or whichever of the paths that you're wanting to go in and network. Go out to LinkedIn, find the company or companies that you're interested in joining and identify who the leaders are in those organizations and just reach out to them, ping them and say, "Hey, you know, I'm really passionate about your company and I'm really passionate about data and this is my background. I just wanted to pick your brain on, you know, what's going on in your business right now or what the needs are of your business right now." Um, be sincere about it, be, upfront about it, um, and reach out to those leaders, and that will help get your name out there. And even if there's not something now, then it might be, it might help them to think about you when something is coming down the pipeline. Um, in addition, a lot of data leaders on LinkedIn um, are pretty active. They'll go out a lot of times and share knowledge on LinkedIn, where they might not do something like this. But they will be pretty active on LinkedIn. Go out and comment on the things that they post, and go out and share the things that they post on also on LinkedIn. And the more you do that, the more your name is, top of mind when something comes up. That would be my recommendation. Because it's a hard market right now. So I do have a question. You've got a master's degree. How many years of, you know, actual market experience do you have? Um, actual, job experience do you have? Or did you go straight from maybe your bachelor's into your master's? And um, I've met plenty of people where that's the case, but there's plenty of people that work for several years and then go back and get their master's too. Um, but yeah, oftentimes, sometimes those degrees, you would like for them to carry a bit more weight, but sometimes they carry more weight when you're moving into a leadership position, unfortunately, than even a senior or a lead or a uh, principal position or a staff position. Staff positions, they usually want a master's degree though, or a PhD. Awesome. Thank you all. Again, it makes my week doing these on Friday nights, and I appreciate everybody that jumps on and spends time with me, and spends time with the community. So thank you, thank you, and please, if you, it means the world to me when people drop comments on the videos too that I post. Helps me to understand which ones that people are really paying attention to and watching, and it's not just like my mom watching them on repeat or something. Um, but yeah, drop a comment on there. Let me know. Hey, this is something that I enjoyed, and I'd like to see more of this. Um, and that helps me um, understand how I need to gear my content for you all. Awesome. Really great engagement tonight. Great questions, guys. If you haven't yet, be sure to join the Discord channel, Gamble Data Sphere. You could go out to my websites above my head here, gambledataengineering.com/contact. Um, and if you go to the services page, you'll see the link to join the Gamble Data Sphere. There's no cost. Just drop your name and your email in there, and it'll give you access. It'll give you a login, and then it'll have the link to join the Discord as well. So, yeah, hopefully we could continue to build a great community. Everybody has been incredibly supportive. Everybody has been, again, super excited for Jorge. Uh, got his first role as a data analyst. So yeah, super excited for Jorge. That's awesome. That really is awesome. So um, super excited. And and VJ, I hope that you find something soon. And you know, if they're reach out to me. You know, if you want to touch base with me, if you'd maybe especially with a master's degree in data science, if there is a project that you've done that you want to showcase, I'm happy to maybe do one of these lives with you, and we could hook up and talk through a project that you've done, and maybe that could be something that you could use to get your name and your experience out in front of other people. I'm happy to do that for people as well. So if that's something that anybody is interested in, be sure to drop me an email. Again, it's chris.gamble at gambledataengineering.com. The email is on the YouTube on my YouTube page, so that you could go into that, contact me, and get that there to make sure that you get the right spelling. But yeah, it's this has been fun and exciting, guys. Um, Still have a few people on, so again, if you, I'm happy to stay on as long as there are more questions. Happy to answer whatever. So if you've got questions, really, like you've seen, for those of you that have been on, like you've seen, I'm happy to answer. I'm an open book, so happy to answer anything. Um, I have, for those of you that maybe don't know, I've been in in the career for 25 years. I've been a center analyst, was kind of how I started my career, a call center analyst, um, doing data work for a regional call center, a regional telecommunications call center, and some of my more recent positions have been as a associate director of data and analytics for a telecommunications company within their cybersecurity org, um, and had a team kind of split of software engineers, data engineers, and BI engineers. Moved away from that to try to start doing some consulting, and but really loved that team. They were awesome. But yeah, if anybody's got any specific questions, be sure to pop them in there. Like I said, I've had personally, I've had a wide array of experience. I've done a lot on prem. Back in the day, we had SQL Server and Postgres and MySQL, and did a lot of stuff early on in with SSIS packages and uh, visualization. Oh, yeah, fancy, you're awesome. Um, which visualization tool do you prefer? I've used Looker, and it was easy to navigate. Honestly, I've used Looker like once, uh, and then it was just so that I could be able to see it. So I don't have a lot of experience with Looker, unfortunately. I've used Tableau and I've used Power BI pretty heavily. Um, between I'll say, since I'm gonna kind of exclude Looker right now because I've not had a lot of experience with Looker. Maybe I maybe that would be a great thing for me to do, though. I might dig into that because that's become more popular lately. Um, Between Tableau, though, and Power BI, like, Tableau's my favorite. I really enjoy Tableau. There's just different things that you could do with it. Power BI, uh, is cool, but I like Tableau is my it's a very lazy name, though. Yeah. Um, I I love Power BI and Tableau, but Tableau is really cool. Um, I like it. I like it. Uh, awesome. So, I was, saying that, what do you like about Tableau? Part of it is when I was going back to school, I love the engagement with y'all. Um, Part of it was when I was going back to school, I used Tableau for a lot of my visualizations, and so it reminds me of my bachelor degree days when I was younger and less gray. Um, but Tableau is, I feel like Tableau is to Power BI, just like Azure is to AWS. There's more um, more that you could do with it in a more advanced format. Um, that's kind of my answer. I know it's kind of generic, but yeah. It and maybe, that would be a good video too, is comparing maybe Tableau and Power BI and Looker. It'd be a great way for me to learn a little bit more about Looker as well. But it then I could demonstrate to you. I think that would be the easiest thing for me to do, is I could demonstrate to you kind of what it is that I like about Tableau a bit better. Um, Suppose you're a hiring manager looking to hire a junior or entry level data engineer. What You might see me bow down. It duck my head a little bit, and it's because my camera gets in the way sometimes. Um, what are the aspects you look for in resume, in your opinion? What will make a candidate stand out? So pre-interview, um, pre-interview in a resume, the things that help a candidate stand out are um, initiative. You could show your initiative for things in your resume by um, kind of showing the projects that you've done, even in pre um, data profession roles, how you jumped into a project to help your org improve efficiency or improve, sales metrics, or to identify sales metrics and build reporting. Um, so being able to show initiative in some manner on a resume, um, in that way, is what jumps out at me. Like, I will hire a person that came from a financial background that never had a official data title long before I'll hire somebody that has had a data title for 10 years and um, maybe comes into the interview and it has a little bit more ego. Um, ego is just such a turnoff when it comes to getting into an interview. So but keep in mind, there's a difference between confidence and ego. There's be sure to kind of show some humbleness when you're going into your interviews. Um, if you're, when you talk about when you're in an interview, what makes people stand out? Um, I've talked about this before in these sessions, but in the interview, being able to show that you're modest, that one I've not actually talked about much before, but being able to show that you're modest and that you can admit to your mistakes, is a big deal. That's such a show of strength and such a show of maturity, that that you make mistakes. Honestly, if you're not learning new things, I mean, if you're not making mistakes, you're probably not learning new things, and that means that you don't have that drive for that continuous learning piece, which leads me into uh, having the showing and demonstrating that you have this drive for continuous learning is huge. It is so incredibly important. Um, and that is the thing that and it goes back to the resume comment too about initiative. That drive for learning and initiative will go way farther than knowing 10 different programming languages. Knowing R and SAS and um, Python and SQL and Java. If you know all those things, um, how in depth, how deep is your knowledge in those things would be my question. Um, and and that person that maybe just knows Python and SQL, and they were self-taught because they really wanted to do some project and help their organization or help their business in a previous role, it really shows that initiative and drive. And there's a certain amount of, there's a certain piece to be said for it's easier to mold somebody into you know your business and the way that your org does things um, if if they're that person as opposed to somebody that is that knows the 10 languages and maybe is a little bit more egotistical and set in their ways. But yeah, that's my personal opinion. I'll say that I've hired a few people over the years from finance into data engineering roles because finance people have such a grasp on data. They have to. They often have to, and so often you might have a couple people in a finance group that have taught themselves Python and SQL or one of the two, and so that they could do something in particular that maybe was not real native to the system. Maybe they're using like an Oracle ERP and they're exporting data and they needed to be able to have a more efficient way of doing it. Um, Oftentimes, those finance people have such a grasp on, um, especially finance data, but it really data in general, because that's such a transferable piece. Um, the finance people I usually have a great grasp on it. Not to say that other parts of the org don't. It, Oftentimes you'll find some project managers that have taught themselves quite a bit. Um, this is a good question. It really depends on the hiring manager. Um, Even when I was at AT&T, um, there some hiring managers um, were so dead set on somebody had to have a specific degree in order for them to even look at potentially hiring them. Um, so I think, yeah, and that was probably 10 years ago. Um, I think that sometimes there is a significant stigma against candidates being self-taught because it's certain hiring managers, and this is primarily the more senior crowd is maybe how I'll put it. Um, but the more seasoned uh, leaders sometimes are so dead set on I want somebody to have a degree before they move into this position that they won't even look at the people that are self-taught. And that's a shame because in my personal opinion, um, the people that are self-taught or even the people that have a combination of being self-taught and demonstrating that they were self-taught the um, with the formal education are so many, are leaps and bounds beyond the people that just have the formal education and haven't gone out and taken the initiative to learn on their own for multiple reasons. One, again, I keep on going back and harping on this continuous learning piece, but it shows your drive for learning and that passion for learning, and that is something that regardless of what your education has been, formal or self-taught, um, you'll have to continue to do that in this profession. There's never going to be an end to that. You will always have to continue to learn and grow in this profession in order to in order to be continue to be relevant. Um, so I'll say that it depends on the hiring manager, especially the more seasoned hiring managers, and the older crowd. That may be that I've seen that. Um, for the younger uh, leaders, not as much, unless there's a couple out there. It's less for the younger hiring managers than for the more seasoned ones, and generally the ones that are dead set on it. having a stigma against being self-taught are the ones that only have a degree and have never experienced having to uh, teach themselves. But those are few and far between. Uh, I think that most people anymore, the majority of people, leaders anymore, understand that having that practical knowledge far outweighs, especially for data roles. Um, you know, I had the chance of working with some students from the University of Florida when I was at AT&T, and T, and for their practical, and they were an awesome group of students, and they have all long since gone to start their careers, but they having that experience, that was an awesome thing that the University of Florida set up for them with us, having that experience with a real world data set from a corporation that was dirty and not clean and needed heavy transformation to get it to a point where they could build some propensity models. Was an amazing thing, and that combines that education piece that with the real world practical kind of self-taught concepts that you normally don't get in academia. So that's my it's my very long-winded answer, Fancy. Sorry, um, but fantastic question. That is, y'all have some amazing questions. So, yeah, um, yeah. If anybody else has any questions, drop them in the chat. We're running on an hour and 44 minutes here, but uh, probably stick on for a little bit longer. Um, I will say, as far as interviews go, and a lot of these questions later this evening have been really around, getting a position and in data, and what that looks like as far as your resume goes, what that looks like as far as getting a foot in the door. Um, it Networking is so important right now because of the atmosphere that we're in the job market, and with all the various kind of larger company tech layoffs. um, I'll say that yeah, it's networking. Networking's a big piece. When you do get a chance, when you do get in there and get a chance to actually get a foot in the door and get an interview, make sure that you're ready to shine. Make sure that you can differentiate yourself by demonstrating that you have that passion for learning, that excitement for learning. Um, they don't know what they don't know. Uh, Fundamentals that are missing. Um, this is my personal experience. Again, I've hired several people out of finance into data engineering roles. Um, Oftentimes, again, I go back to it's easier to. You're welcome. Thank you, VJ. Um, Hopefully, I'm using your name correctly. Um, I'll say that my experience with being self-taught and missing fundamentals, is that there's a piece. I've said this for a long time. You don't know what you don't know until you know it. Um, yeah, I'll touch on that in a second, Fancy. Um, I'll cover this real quick first. Fundamentals that As far as fundamentals that are missing, one, generally those fundamentals are things like nomenclature as to how to consistently name things. Um, Sometimes using schemas. Oftentimes, people that are self-taught stick with like a DBO schema. Um, I did for years until I was taught otherwise. Um, early on, because you don't know. You don't to that point. You don't know what you don't know until you know it, and but those are the people that you could bring in and mold. If you know that up front that somebody's self-taught and that they may be missing some of those fundamentals, those are easy to teach. What is difficult to teach is critical thinking, is looking at a problem and being able to logically look at that data and break it down and figure out what's going on. Um, a lot of times, people that are self taught have that such a strong critical thinking ability. I could easily teach the core concept. You know, I could easily teach you know, the those core concepts, that fundamentals that you may be missing, and generally it is this is the thing about self-taught people, is that it's not always that they're missing the fundamentals. Sometimes they just don't know the nomenclature for it. They don't know what the right words are to put with the right things. um so yeah. I do have my master's. So the core content, core understanding is not just tools that need to be included for any learner's self-study. I do have my master's, and I'll say that I went to Western Governors University, and it was a fantastic experience for me. I was able to get my degree so I could move into leadership positions, um, more easily move into leadership positions. But I'll say that some of the, I guess, core concepts that I learned from my master's degree. I don't know. Honestly, what I learned from my master's degree was more that uh, I don't hate writing as much as I thought I hated writing. Um, like I'll write code all day long. You know, for the longest time, I'll write code all day long, but I didn't want to write a 10-page paper explaining what was going on. Um, it terrified me. So that's I know that's doesn't answer your question, but I go back to what I mentioned a minute ago, though, as far as core understandings that may not show up in a self learner study, is understanding things like what the names of things are, um, understanding that something is a fact and a dimension, and what a fact and dimension is. You may have used things that are facts and dimensions for years as a self learner and not understood what that's what they were. Um, you know, you may understand how to model a data set, how to break things up, but you may not understand that it's called a star schema, or you may not understand the difference between a star schema and a snowflake schema. So if those are the things that, if I go out and say, "Hey, I need you to build this out," and using a snowflake schema, um, you may go out and not understand that what a snowflake schema is, and I might have to walk you through it. And I might get halfway through that conversation, and you may be like, "Oh, yeah, I understand that concept. I just didn't know what that was called." That's my biggest thing that I run into, is that the nomenclature piece. Um, or people, self learners sometimes will default to, um, it's called OBT, so one big table, um, for their engineering and their analytics, um, because that's how the data comes across, or that's how what they've always seen, and may not understand that you need to, for efficiency's sake, need to split things up into um, dimensions and facts. Um, the other thing I'll say is self learners often don't know how to make things more efficient, um, because they've never run into data sets that were so large that they needed to. Um, So understanding how to make things more efficient, and I've seen a several self learners, and again, early on I was this way too. Use left joins for everything, um, and not understand that it's important to use an inner join for efficiency's sake when the data is going to match between the two tables, right? And you don't have to worry about needing a left join. So if you need an inner join, or if you need to use an inner join to as a filter, right? Sometimes using an inner join as a filter, as a instead of a where criteria, um, instead of a where clause in your statement, is much more efficient um, than using that where statement. Um, what else? Those are the usually it comes down to making things efficient, writing queries that are and code that is efficient and not just works. I think a lot of times, sometimes self learners are self learners out of necessity, and what happens is that sometimes self learners learn to put things together with duct tape and super glue because that's how they figured out how to do it, which again is huge and shows critical thinking skills. So that's amazing. I love those people because they can think on their own and think independently and don't follow a specific pattern. Um, and again, I could teach, as a leader, as a mentor, I could teach the efficiency piece and how to clean up your code and how to um, write more efficient queries and more efficient code. It, it's much more difficult to teach the ability to think critically. So that I think hopefully that answers your question. Again, apologize for being a little bit long winded. It took me a minute to get to the point, but that's what I'll say. Yeah, again, for those of you that are just jumping on, really answering questions about um, interviewing and you know, gaining a position as one of the data professions, and what that looks like from a hiring manager position point of view, and as well as what stands out maybe in interviews or what stands out in resumes. We've talked about the difference between self-taught and formal degrees, things like that. So pop your questions in the chat. Happy to have continue this conversation. This has been amazing. Hopefully it will help others as well that come back and watch the video later. um, I'll be sure to go through and put some chapters in here so people could quickly get back to these pieces. Um, so, but yeah, VJ, thank you for jumping on tonight. You've asked some awesome questions. I really, really appreciate it. Um, and Fancy, always appreciate you. You are you are here with me like every time that I've been on. I think so. So thank you, and you always ask amazing questions. This has been uh, awesome. So thanks. Did I do this one? Yeah. I did. So yeah, yeah. Resume. The other thing I'll say about standing out with a resume, um, don't overload your resume with keywords, um, because it becomes obvious. I heard recently, other people on another podcast that I listen to, uh, don't don't entirely write um, your resume with Chat GPT or Claude or something, because those tools often use the same verbiage over and over again. So it's really easy to tell usually um, that you did that, first of all, but also again, those tools are really fabulous at making things up. Um, we talked about how, it'll do some programming and some coding and give you some scripts, but it's often not always accurate. Especially the more complex that you get with it, you definitely have to have a foundation in some of that programming to understand why it's not accurate and help to troubleshoot it. Um, but it same thing with a resume. It'll make up stuff. Um, and kind of guess at, maybe some efficiencies that you brought to an organization that maybe you didn't really bring, and put it into your resume. So if you do use one of those tools, for help with maybe updating your resume or making it better, be sure that you do a great job of proofreading it. um, be sure that what it does put in there is accurate. um, and I would say always, always, um, be honest and upfront in your interviews about your skills. Um, one, hiring managers usually will be able to tell that, through some probing and some questioning, that you're lying, that you're not maybe telling the whole truth. Um, and two, um, if you do get into the position and then all of a sudden you get a project with those skills that maybe you're not as strong with that as you maybe portrayed yourself to be, then be might be in hot water, right? It might be a very stressful situation. um, awesome. Again, Nancy's probably my person that's still on, I would guess, but probably hanging on waiting for me to get off of here so that you could go do something else. um, well, we are approaching 2 hours. So I do think I'm probably going to wrap it up here. If you have any final questions, pop them in the chat. Happy to answer them. And if not, I'm going to jump back on wrapping up my QuickBooks video so that I could get that scheduled for next week. And, but yeah, somebody popped back on. Somebody else popped on. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat. Um, but yeah, gonna get back to finishing up this Python QuickBooks video, and so I could get that posted, um, and then probably start working on the Square one. So yeah, well, thank you all again for joining. This has been awesome as always. Uh, I'll be back on again next Friday night about 10 o'clock, and to answer more questions, and maybe this is what we've used these for, is interview type questions. I think that that's usually what we kind of float to. So, all right. Well, you all have a great week, and I will talk to you again next Friday. Thank you.